Can you hunt, and should you hunt in the rifle seasons with your crossbow? That's this episode of Death by Bunjie. Well, I'm sitting down here below the house, below the buckfield clover food plot, tucked in a nice little blind. It's about 25 degrees right now, nice and cold. It is the last day of the Pennsylvania rifle season for white-tailed deer, or as I call it, the end of the second crossbow season. That's what I call it. Because, as you know, and as I've mentioned before on the show, I hunt almost exclusively with a crossbow. But I just want to sort of do a video telling you some of the reasons for that and some of the things to take into consideration if you think that you want to go out in the rifle season with your crossbow. And one of the reasons I decided to focus on crossbow hunting was simply because in Pennsylvania here, we can use the crossbow during all of the white-tailed deer seasons. In other words, I can use it during the archery season now, of course, since 2010, but I can use it during all the way through 2 weeks of rifle season that we have after Thanksgiving, and I can use it in the late season, the flintlock muzzleloader season. I can use it then as well. So it gives me the maximum amount of coverage, the maximum amount of time to spend in the woods hunting deer with the same weapon. And I really appreciate that because, like I've said before, the more you do something, the better you get at it. And the more time you spend with your crossbow, you're only going to get more proficient with it. So it's just one of those good things. For me, it just makes sense to try and hunt with it all year long. Now, Pennsylvania has a great tradition of rifle hunting. When I grew up in the 1980s, all we did was hunt with a rifle. I was out there with my trusty Model 94 Winchester 30-30 every year, hunting year after year after year. And Pennsylvania, we had at the time probably 1 million people entering the woods at that time. I think the estimates this year are about half that. It's actually down considerably. But nonetheless, we have this huge tradition that I've taken part in of deer hunting in rifle seasons. We have time off from school. All the schools close the first day of buck season. It's just a huge tradition here in Pennsylvania, and I really appreciate that. Now, there's no question that the most efficient, the most effective way to hunt deer is with a rifle. There's no question about that. I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that Bunjie here is as effective a weapon as a rifle may be. And I still do hunt with a rifle occasionally. You've seen me shoot some woodchucks and stuff like that. If I do any predator hunting, I use a rifle for that. But that to me is more utility. That to me is more of a task, something that needs to be done, as opposed to hunting deer, where this is more recreational for me. And that's one of the reasons that the crossbow works for it perfectly. Nonetheless, if you choose to go out during the rifle seasons with your crossbow, there's a number of things you're going to want to take into consideration. First of all, if you're out there in the rifle seasons with your crossbow, as you know, any place where you've got a lot of pressured deer, those deer are going to be moving. So you have to think about that ahead of time. You have to be in locations where the deer will feel comfortable stopping if you call to them or if they're passing by and you can get them to stop. Can't shoot at a moving deer with your crossbow. You can't shoot a running deer. You really shouldn't be shooting a walking deer. We should be shooting at stationary targets with our crossbow. So that's the goal. So what I try to do is sit somewhere deeper into the property where the deer might be pushed off of the neighboring property running toward me. But by the time they get to me, they're slowing down a little bit. They feel a little bit less pressured, a little bit less nervous, and I might be able to stop them and get a shot. I've seen deer during those seasons. I want to be clear up front, I've never shot a deer during the rifle season with my crossbow. Hope to do that someday. Hope to do it today. We'll see if it happens. This food plot, we've gotten some snow today in the food plot. I saw some in the snow out there. I can see some tracks, so they've been in here. One of the things I've noticed as well is that the first day of the rifle season, that's when you hear all the shots. The Saturdays are kind of busy, like the first Saturday. But today's the last Saturday. I've heard one shot. It must have been 2 miles away. So you don't really get a lot of shots. The pressure does let up. That's what I'm trying to say. It does calm down a little bit. The deer do return to normal. The first day is not the best day to be out in the woods with your crossbow, at least here. But every place you hunt is going to be a little bit different, so take that into account. Another thing you're going to want to take into account is it legal where you are? Now, it may not be legal. I was kind of surprised to learn, for example, that in parts of Canada, you can't hunt during the rifle seasons with a crossbow. That surprised me. I've always considered Canada to be sort of the birthplace of the modern hunting crossbow. I guess that's because Bunjie here is an Excalibur. It's a Canadian company. That's something that surprised me. But you got to look at your local regulations. Here in Pennsylvania, I'm allowed to hunt all through the rifle season with a crossbow, but I still have to dress like the other rifle hunters, okay? I have to dress like, I have to wear the fluorescent orange, got to wear the hat. I'm sitting in a blind, I have to have fluorescent orange outside the blind. So I place a fluorescent orange hat in the blind, out in a limb, just outside the blind, because that's just one of the local regulations. Make sure you read those regulations. Make sure you're complying with your local regulations if you choose to go out in the rifle seasons with your crossbow. Now, there are a couple of other things that are inevitably going to come up that I want to mention here. If you choose to go out during the rifle season with your crossbow, understand that when you shoot a deer with your crossbow, it doesn't die right there on the spot. You're going to have to track that deer. Now, that's not ordinarily a problem. It's part of the fun. It's part of one of the things I really like about crossbow hunting. But if you shoot a deer and it's moving and it happens to make its way onto the neighbor's property, there's nothing to stop a neighboring rifle hunter from shooting that deer. And you might find yourself in an argument over who's entitled to that deer, whose deer is it going to be. Now, that's a subject of a different video, but nevertheless, you're going to want to take that into account. For that reason, what I like to do is hunt closer to the core of the property. I move in and I'm sort of here where I am. I'm pretty close to the house, actually. But like I said, there's been some deer activity here. But if those deer make their way through and I shoot a deer, if I get a good shot on a deer, it's not likely to leave the property, not likely to go in where any rifle hunters are. But take that into account. Which brings up another point. If you are hunting in the woods during the rifle season with your crossbow, you go into the woods, there's a good chance your activity, your presence in the woods is going to push deer onto the neighboring properties. And if that happens, you very well might be pushing that trophy buck that you're after off to the neighbor and he'll shoot it with his rifle. That's a possibility. Some guys I talk to, some guys here on YouTube, will tell you that, well, for that reason, I don't hunt at all during the rifle seasons. I just stay out of the woods and let my property serve as a sanctuary. That's not a bad idea. It's going to depend on your area, it's going to depend on your neighbors, that sort of thing. But if you allow your property to serve as a sanctuary, that's probably going to save you some deer for when you do head back out into the woods with your crossbow. Now, I don't like to do that. In fact, what I do, I let the neighbors know. I like to be a presence here in case I have a pretty good relationship with my neighbors. I can't complain about that. But there might be the occasional trespasser wandering through, and for that reason, I like to be present during the rifle seasons. I like to be out here in fluorescent orange, visible, let people see me, let them see me walking into the woods if they happen to be within eye shot or whatever. So to me, that's an important factor. That's an important feature. Thing to take into consideration is sort of keeping people off of there. But be aware that your presence, anytime you're out there, and if there's a bunch of rifle hunters around, you might be pushing deer to them. Another consideration, of course, is what your property is set up for. I work all year long on this property. Those of you watching this show regularly will know that. But I work all year long on it to set it up for crossbow. I'm looking at short shots. I got 30-yard, 40-yard shots at the most that are set up. My food plots generally keep pretty short range shots. I don't have a lot of long fields where I got a shot with a rifle at 200 yards or anything like that. It's just not really something that goes on here. This place, I'm not setting it up for that. The last deer I shot during the rifle season, I was sitting over here drinking coffee just on the corner of the field down below the house. I walked in, sat on a log. I shot a nice doe down here with the 30-30, and that was a 20-yard shot. So rifle to me is very similar in that respect to the crossbow. It doesn't really change much for me. This place just happens to be set up that way. There have been, on the other hand, some instances where having a rifle with me would have been a benefit. A couple of years ago, you'll remember the big guy was still around, had one really, really nice buck that made his way through that one season. Fortunate enough to get one of his sheds at one point, in fact. But that deer was down on the well-pad food plot, one of the encounters that I had with him. With a rifle, a proper rifle like a 270, I probably could have got the job done. I could have taken a shot at that deer. Probably not with my 30-30. That wouldn't have been a good shot because it was about 80 yards. But with a proper 270 that I have now, I probably could have killed that deer. So you are giving things up if you choose to go into the woods with a crossbow during the rifle season. You are making choices. In that case, I made a choice, but I don't regret it at all. I got some great footage of it. I still have a memory of that deer, something I can hang on the wall, something at least. But that's part of being out there. To me, it's being out there, connecting with the outdoors, connecting with the property, and just enjoying the outdoors. That's what it's all about for me. So I guess really it just comes down to, what do you want to do? What do you want to hunt? with. What's the most fun for you? For me, what's most fun is the crossbow. I love going out here. I'm going to sit here the rest of the afternoon, look out across this nice little food plot, and hope that a nice doe comes in and I can get a shot at her. I've already killed a buck this season. I only get one buck tag here in Pennsylvania. Go back and watch that video if you haven't seen it already. But if I get a shot at a nice nanny or a nice healthy yearling doe, I'll take a shot today, and maybe Genevieve can help me track it in the snow. But really what it comes down to for me is what's the most fun for you? What do you want to do? And do it. If you're not having fun doing it, it's just not worth doing. So enjoy it. Get out there and enjoy the outdoors. Enjoy your crossbow hunting, and good luck to you when you go out. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to Death by Bunjie to watch all our future videos. Check out the Twitter account, and make sure you get on that old Facebook page. We're having a lot of fun on there. I was a little lazy this week, but next week I'm going to be back with a whole bunch of trail camera pictures after the place calms down and I can start getting some deer on some trail cameras here after the second crossbow season ends. We'll get back to things as usual here, posting a lot of trail camera pictures. So until next time, all hail Bunjie!
The second state is #1.